Hey guys, I am T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. Today I'll be teaching you how to make a modern top. Modern, yet classic. At first it sounds wrong, but it works here. There's a lovely modern ribbing, a dandy texture, thanks Suzette, and an overall shape that's reminiscent of yesteryear. Speaking of, if you love your crochet with a hint of nostalgia or brand spanking new, we've got you covered. We have hundreds of classic and modern crochet patterns with new patterns on the way, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now, it's time to get on the show, so without further ado, for this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 300 grams of yarn, and that's 450 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us your favorite meal of the day. For me, I love, and I mean love, breakfast. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 4 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet. This tutorial is for size small, but you can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Next, we're all going to grab our 5mm hook and make a chain the width that we'd like for our front panel detail to be. I'd like for mine to be about 4 inches or 10 centimeters, or the width of the base of my neck. So I'm going to start by making a chain of 16. Now that we have our chain, we're going to do our row 1, which is a half double crochet row. So block off that last chain, do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. And then into that chain that we blocked off, or the 3rd chain from our hook, insert with a half double crochet. So insert, pull through all 3, and put 1 half double crochet into every chain. Our row 1 is finished, so let's get started on row 2. We're all going to start by doing a chain 2 and flip your work. Now, for this Suzette stitch detail, we're always going to frame our work with a front post double on the outer ends. So to get that started, we're going to start with just 1 half double crochet into the last stitch from our previous row. So insert your hook in through there with 1 half double crochet, and then finding that 2nd half double crochet from our row 1, we're going to insert with our front post double crochet. So this is my 1st stitch, this is my 2nd. Yarn over, and then underneath that 2nd half double crochet from our row 1, insert your hook underneath and bring your hook through the other side. From here, we're going to yarn over, pull through, and we're going to pull up nice and tall to get the same height as the half double crochet, and then double crochet per usual. So pull through 2, pull through 2. That is going to be our framing stitch. Now let's get started on our Suzette stitch detail. So we're going to skip 1 stitch from our previous row because this front post double crochet counts as this stitch, and then into that following stitch, we're going to do a single crochet and a double crochet. So into that stitch, insert, pull through 2. There's our single crochet, and then a double crochet into that same stitch. So bring your hook down, pull through 2, and pull through 2. That is 1 Suzette stitch set. And that's pretty much it, so let's do another. After every set, we're always going to skip the following stitch because the double crochet that we did counts as that following stitch. If we work into there, then we will be accidentally increasing. So we're going to skip 1, Into the following, insert with another single, and then into that same stitch, a double crochet. Again, skip that following stitch, into the stitch directly after, a single, and a double crochet. Now we're going to continue to do this until we have 2 stitches left. Now we have done our Suzette stitches until we have 2 stitches left. We technically have 1, 2, 3 stitches, but remember that following stitch after that last Suzette stitch counts as that double crochet that we did. So just 1 and 2 stitches left. We're going to need to close this row off with a front post double crochet. So yarn over, and then into the second to last half double crochet, not counting that chain 2, we're going to do a front post double. So not counting the chain 2, here's my first half double. Here's my second. So insert your hook underneath that second, pull through, pull up nice and tall, pull through 2, pull through 2, and then we're going to half double crochet into the last stitch from our previous row. So yarn over, into that last stitch, pull through, and pull through all 3 loops. Now our row 2 is all finished up. To get started on row 3, chain 2 and flip your work. Now working our odd number rows, we're looking at the back of our Suzette stitch detail. So we don't have to do our front post double crochets. We're going to start off every odd number row with 2 half double crochets, so 1 into each of the following 2 stitches. Start with the yarn over, insert, pull through, and then into the following, insert, pull through. Now from here, we're going to Suzette stitch until we have 1 stitch left. When it comes to doing our Suzette stitch, we're going to want to make sure that our single and double crochet, so every Suzette stitch set, is worked into the previous row's single crochet to get the proper texture that we want. So after those 2 half double crochets at the beginning of every odd number row, we're going to skip that following stitch because that following stitch is a double crochet from our previous row, and then do our Suzette stitch set in that following stitch. So we're going to skip 1 into that next set, a single, and then also a double into that same stitch. And again, we're going to skip 1 into that following stitch, a single, and a double. Continue doing our Suzette stitch set until we have 1 stitch left, and we should have the same amount of sets as our previous row. I've done my Suzette stitch set, making our way all the way down, and I have 1 stitch left, but technically 2 stitches, but we're not counting that second to last stitch because it's double crochet, counts as that second to last stitch. Now to close off our odd number row, we're just going to put 1 half double crochet into the last stitch from our previous row. And now our first 3 rows are finished. Let's just get started on row 4 and 5 just to make sure we have it down. I'll let you guys do the rest on your own. So chain 2 and flip your work. So every even number row is going to start with a half double crochet. Yarn over, insert into the last stitch from our previous row with a half double crochet. Now we need to do our framing stitch, which is a front post double crochet. Our framing stitch is always going to be worked into our previous even numbered row. So since we're working on row 4, we're going to insert our hook into the front post double crochet of row 2. Yarn over, find the front post double crochet from row 2, insert your hook underneath, pull through. Pull up tall to get the same height as the half double crochet, pull through 2, and pull through 2. And from here, we're going to do our Suzette stitch. So start by skipping that next stitch into our previous row because this front post double crochet counts as that stitch. And then into that following stitch, which should be a single crochet from our previous row, insert with a single and a double. And we're going to continue with our Suzette stitch sets until we have 1 stitch left. I've made my way down. I have 1 stitch left, technically 2 because this last double crochet counts as a second to last. And we're going to do our front post double crochet and then close this row off with a half double. So yarn over, find the front post double from our previous even number row, which is our row 2, and insert your hook underneath that post stitch. Yarn over, pull through, pull up tall, pull through 2, pull through 2, and then half double crochet into the last stitch from our previous row. And to get started on our row 5, chain 2 and flip your work. Now, like I said in one of our previous clips, each of our odd number rows is going to start with 1 half double crochet into the first 2 stitches. So yarn over into that last stitch from our previous row with 1 half double, and then into that following stitch, another half double, and then we're going to skip that following stitch and then do our Suzette stitch set. So that following stitch should be a double crochet from our previous row. We can tell because it's a little bit higher, and then into that following, a Suzette stitch set. And continue to do our Suzette stitches until we have 1 stitch left. We're nearly finished with our row 5. We have 1 stitch left, technically 2, but this double crochet counts as that second to last stitch. And we're just going to put 1 half double crochet into the last stitch from our previous row. And let's take a look at what we have. From here, we're going to continue to repeat rows 4 and 5 until we get the length of the piece that we want, so cropped or long. So make sure that you place the first row right where you want the bottom of this top to be, and then we're going to continue on with these rows until we get the length that we want. If you would like to cover more of your chest, do more rows, or if you'd like to show a little bit more, do fewer rows. But either way, I will meet you back right after an even number row. The length of my detail is all finished. I have a total of 42 rows, and my length is 14 inches or 35 centimeters. And now we're going to start working on our side panel. We should have all ended right after an even number row. So now we're going to chain 1 and work along the side of our detail. We're going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row till the end of our row. So let's all find our first side row, which this is mine right here. It should have a decent gap to it. We're going to insert our hook with 1 single crochet. Find our following side row, which is this one right here. There isn't that much of a gap because remember we did 2 half double crochets at the beginning of those rows. So find that top loop and insert with 2 single crochets. So there's 1, and then there's 2. And that's it. Let's do this again. Find our following side row, which should be this gap, with just 1 single crochet. Into that following side row, insert with 2 single crochets. So there's 1, and then there's 2. Continue this until we reach the end of the row, and then I will meet you back. Our single crochet row to prep for our side panel is finished. Now we're going to do a back loop slip stitch row to get started on our ribbing. So at the end of the row, chain 1 and flip your work. To do our back loop slip stitches, we're going to find the last stitch from our previous row and insert your hook into that back loop or the loop that's furthest away from us. And then we're going to yarn over, pull through everything on our hook. Let's do this again. Into that following stitch's back loop, insert and gently pull through everything. And we're going to continue to put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, remembering not to tug too tightly after every stitch. Otherwise, the following row may be a little too tight to work into. Now that our back loop slip stitch row is finished, our following row is going to be a back loop half double crochet row, and then it's going to be a repeat of back loop slip stitches and back loop half double crochets. So at the end of our row, chain 2 and flip our work. Let's all start with a yarn over. Find the last stitch from our previous row, insert into that back loop with a half double crochet. And just once more, yarn over, insert into that back loop with a half double, and continue putting 1 half double crochet into every back loop till the end of the row. At the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch as well. Then the following half double crochet row will have an increase into it, so I'll meet you back when we have a total of 4 rows, and then we'll increase together. So I am back. Altogether, we should have 1, 2, 3, 4 rows finished. Like I said, we're going to be increasing into every other half double crochet row. So since we just finished up our slip stitch row and we're along the top, we're going to start this following half double crochet row with an increase of 2 back loop half double crochets. So start with the yarn over. Insert your hook into that last stitch from our previous row with 1 half double crochet, and then into that same back loop with a second half double crochet, and that is our increase. From here, we're going to put 1 half double crochet into every back loop, and then right after that, a back loop slip stitch row. From here, we're going to continue to repeat rows 2 through 5. So just as a refresher, starting from row 2, it's a back loop slip stitch row, a back loop half double crochet row, and another back loop slip stitch row. None of those rows had increases or decreases. And then into that following back loop half double crochet row, start with an increase of 2. Now we're only increasing into every other back loop half double crochet row because we would like a really gradual curve up to our shoulder. So continue to repeat our 4 previous rows. I will meet you back once when our work can stretch, because remembering our work does have a decent amount of stretch to it, over to the corner of our underarm right after a back loop half double crochet row. I am back and the entirety of my side panel is finished. I have a total of 13 rows, that is counting from my first single crochet row, and my width is 3 inches or 8 centimeters unstretched, or my total width is 7 inches or 19 centimeters. From here, we're going to work on our underarm. So let's all start by inserting our stitch marker right where the corner of our underarm is. So making sure that we're placing the scoop right where we want the neckline to be, we're going to insert our stitch marker. This could be a little bit different for everyone, so make sure that you're placing this where it needs to be. And then we're going to do the following row in our row sequence, which is a back loop slip stitch row. So put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch until we reach our stitch marker. We've made our way up to our stitch marker with our back loop slip stitch row. Now we're going to get started on our half double crochet row, and it's going to start with a decrease of 2. So let's all do a chain 2 and flip your work. To get started on our decrease, we're going to yarn over, insert your hook into the last stitch from our previous rows, back loop, pull through into that following stitch's back loop, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 4, and continue putting 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. From here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows. So a back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases, and then a back loop half double crochet row that starts with a decrease of 2. We're going to continue to repeat those 2 rows until this portion that we have can stretch to mid underarm, and I will meet you back right after we do a chain up of 1 and cut right after a half double crochet row. So the entirety of one side of my front panel is all finished. I have a total of 17 rows, and my width is about 4 inches or 10 centimeters, or my total width is 8 inches or 20 centimeters. Now from here, we're going to do the other side, but we're going to need to insert our hook into a different place because the ribbing that we have isn't reversible. So we're all going to start by inserting our same 5mm hook into the bottom of our Suzette stitch detail. And just to get this started, the first 4 rows are going to be exactly the same as the first 4 rows that we had for the first side panel that we did. So it's going to be a single crochet row alternating between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row, a back loop slip stitch row, a back loop half double crochet row, and another back loop slip stitch row, and none of those stitches have any increases or decreases. I will meet you back when we get started on our row 5, which is going to be a half double crochet row, so that I can show you where we're going to be increasing into that row. I am back and we have 1, 2, 3, 4 rows finished. Now we're going to need to do the same increases that we did for the other side of our front panel. So it's going to be an increase in the ends of every other half double crochet row again. So into the 5th row, start your half double crochet row, leaving the last stitch so that we can now increase together. So into that last stitch, right after we made our way all the way up with our back loop half doubles, an increase of 2 back loop half double crochets. So there is 1, and into that same back loop, there is 2. From here, we're going to repeat our rows 2 through 5. So right after this is going to be a back loop slip stitch row, a back loop half double crochet row, and then a back loop slip stitch row. Again, none of those 3 rows have increases or decreases into them. And then that following half double will have an increase at the end of the half double crochet row. We're going to continue to repeat these rows until we have the same amount of side panel rows as our other side, not including the underarm portion. Now when we finally have the same amount of rows, we will end along the top. So do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I will meet you back to get started on the underarm portion for this side. So the second half of my side panel is nearly finished. I have the same amount of rows when it came to doing our increase rows, and now we're just going to finish off our front panel with our underarm. So like I said, we were all going to end up along the top, so do a chain up of 1 and cut. And next we're going to insert our stitch marker into the same amount of stitches that we inserted our stitch marker into for this side. So I've inserted my stitch marker into the 5th stitch from the top. So I did the same thing over here. And now we're going to do our following row in a row sequence, which is a back loop slip stitch row, starting by inserting our hook into that following stitch that we have that's right next to our stitch marker, working our way down. So inserting our hook into that following stitch that we have, we're going to insert in through that back loop, insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and we're going to put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, starting into that stitch that our chain is in. So into that same back loop, yarn over, pull through both loops on our hook, and continue putting 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and then at the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work and put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 2 so we can decrease together. Our first back loop slip stitch row for our underarm is finished, and then we put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving 2 right before the end. Now we're going to do a decrease of 2, so yarn over into that second to last back loop, pull through and into that last back loop, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 4, and continue to repeat our 2 previous rows. So a back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases, and then a back loop half double crochet row that ends on a decrease of 2 back loop half double crochets for the same amount of underarm rows as the first underarm portion that we did. When we have the same amount of rows, do a chain up of 1 and cut. My second underarm portion is finished. I did do a chain up of 1 and cut, and now the entirety of my front panel is finished. I have a total of 12 inches or 31 centimeters now, and that is unstretched. Now that we have the front panel finished, we'll set this off to the side, and then we can get started with the back panel. So getting started on our back panel, we're all going to make a chain for the same amount of stitches that we have for the last underarm row. It should be the same amount of stitches for both sides, so just pick one and count it out. I have a total of 57 stitches, so I will now be making a chain of 57. And I actually already have my underarm portion for my back finished up, so I'm going to be doing a little sample size with you. Now that we have our chain, we're going to do a half double crochet row. So block off that last chain and chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that is our turning chain. And then we're going to yarn over and insert into that chain that we blocked off, or the third chain from our hook, with a half double crochet, and continue putting 1 half double crochet into every chain, leaving the last one. Now that we've put 1 half double crochet into every chain, leaving the last one, into that last chain we're going to do an increase of 2 half double crochets. So that's going to be 2 half double crochets into that same last chain. And now that our half double crochet row is finished, we're going to do a back loop slip stitch row, and that will not have any increases or decreases. So chain 1, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Our back loop slip stitch row is now finished, and we're going to do another half double crochet row, but now within the back loops to get the same ribbing as our front panel. So into that last stitch from our previous row, find that stitch's back loop and put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one to increase together once more. Our row 3 is nearly finished. Into that last back loop, we're going to insert with an increase of 2 back loop half double crochets. And from here, we're going to continue to repeat our rows 2 and 3. So a back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases, and then a back loop half double crochet row that ends on an increase of 2 back loop half double crochets until this portion can stretch from mid underarm over to the side of the base of our neck. Now the point doesn't need to reach the base of our neck, it just needs to be aligned with the side of it. When we have that, I will meet you back right after a half double crochet row. The underarm portion for my back panel is finished up. I have a total of 15 rows and my width is 3.5 inches or 9 centimeters, unstretched. Now from here we're going to work on the back portion. So we're going to make a chain that reaches all the way up to our shoulder. I needed a total of 5 inches or 13 centimeters, so I made a chain 20. And from here we're going to do our back loop slip stitch and back loop half double crochet rows for the width of the base of our neck. We want to make sure that we're keeping this as close to the width of the base of our neck as possible because we want a certain cut when it comes to doing the neckline and for the sleeves. So all we're going to do is block off that last chain, chain 1, and then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, insert with a slip stitch, and then put 1 slip stitch into every chain. When we reach the body portion, 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and then at the end of the row, 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. Then we're going to continue to repeat our back loop half double and back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases, like I said, until we have the same width at the base of our neck, but making sure that we are stretching it as if we were wearing it. And I will meet you back right after a back loop slip stitch row. So I have the back portion of my back panel all finished. I have a total of 28 rows now, and that width is just about 6 inches or 15 centimeters unstretched. And now we're going to get started on the underarm. So first thing we're going to have to do is insert our stitch marker into the stitch for the same amount of chains that we made that led all the way up to our shoulder. So if you have my numbers, I made a chain of 20. Along the top here, I inserted my stitch marker into the 20th stitch. Now get started on the following row in our row sequence, which is a back loop half double crochet, and I'll meet you back when we have 2 stitches left, right before our stitch marker. We've made our way up with our back loop half double crochets. Into the last 2 stitches right before our stitch marker, we're going to do a decrease of 2. So yarn over, insert into that second to last back loop, pull through, also into that last back loop, pull through all 4, and now we're going to do a back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases. So chain 1, flip your work and put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. From here, continue to repeat our 2 previous rows. So a back loop half double crochet row that ends on a decrease of 2, and then a back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases until we have the same amount of underarm rows as the first half of our underarm for the back panel. When we have the same amount of rows, do a chain up of 1 and cut. So as you can see, the entirety of my back panel is finished. I also did do a sleeve, but we're going to get to that in just a little bit. We are first going to need to seam our pieces together. So let's all make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, and then we're going to insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. This is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam, so making sure that the ribbing that we have for the front panel is faced up and the ribbing that we have for the back panel is face down. We're going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through everything, and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now to do the first one, we're going to find that first stitch into the front panel and insert only in through that front loop. Find the next stitch into the back panel, insert only in through that back loop, and then we're going to yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. To do that again, we're going to find that next stitch into the front panel, insert in through that front loop, find that next stitch into the back panel, insert into the back loop, and pull through all 3. And we're going to continue to do this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat on the other side. So now that everything is seamed together, we can get started on our sleeve. We are first going to need to make a chain along with our single crochet row to clean everything up that reaches from this top corner of the front panel to the top corner of the back panel. And we want to have the same amount of stitches from the front and the back, so we're going to need to do a little bit of math. So let's first get started at looking at our back panel. So what we're going to do is count 2 single crochets for every side half double crochet row that we have, 1 single crochet for every side slip stitch row that we have, and then 1 single crochet for every stitch. So let me just count all of mine out together with you guys. So starting with this first half double crochet that we have, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. And then I also made a chain of 20 right here. So 23 plus 20 is 43. Keep that number in mind, and then we're going to count the amount of rows and stitches that we have within the front panel. Subtract those two numbers, and then that sum is going to be the amount of chains that we need to make. So same rules apply for the front panel as well. 2 singles for every half double, 1 single for every side slip, and then 1 single for every stitch. So all together, I'm going to count mine out with you guys as well. This is my first side row, which is a side half double. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I skipped a total of 5 stitches here. So 6 plus 5 is 11. So I'm going to take my number from my back panel, which is 43, and then my number from the front panel, which is 11. Subtract those two, and then that answer is going to be the amount of chains that we need to make. So for me, I'm going to need to make 32 chains from my front panel to my back panel. But once we have that number, let's all get started on working on the right side of our piece. So making sure that our work is flipped right side up, right side out, and we're looking at the front panel. We're going to insert our hook into the last stitch that we have into our side seam. We are going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and we're going to put 2 single crochets into every side half double. So this is my first side half double. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with 1 single crochet so far. And if you'd like me, you have some tail ends. If you'd like to weave them in as you go, just place them over your hook. And then single crochet per usual. And since this is a side half double, we're going to be putting 1 more single crochet into that same top loop. And then single crochet. Now, our following side row is the side slip stitch row. I'm going to find that top loop, insert my hook in through there with just 1 single crochet. And we're going to continue to put 2 single crochets into every side half double. So here's my first single crochet. And then into that same side half double with my second single crochet. And then 1 single crochet into every side slip stitch row. So find that top loop and insert your hook with a single until we don't have any more side rows left to work into. And since I don't, I'm going to be putting 1 single crochet into every stitch until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. And now we're going to make that chain that we figured out when we were trying to figure out how many chains to make. So if you guys have my numbers, I need to make a total chain of 32. Now that we have our chain, let's single crochet into the back panel. So let's flip our work over. We are going to find the top corner stitch of the back panel. Insert your hook in through there with a single crochet. That single crochet does connect the chain to the back panel, but that counts as a stitch as well. And then from here, put 1 single crochet into every stitch, and then 2 single crochets into every side half double, 1 single crochet into every side slip stitch row, making our way all the way down, and then slip stitch into that chain space. So now that our first prep row is finished up, we're going to get started on our first sleeve row. So right after we have slip stitched into that chain space, we're going to chain 1. And just for this following row, we're going to work in the same direction as our previous row, so clockwise and still to the left. And we are all going to start with a decrease of 2 single crochets. So finding the first stitch from our previous row, insert your hook, pull through, into the following stitch into our previous row, pull through all 3 loops. That is our decrease of 2 single crochets. And now we're going to put 1 single crochet into each of the following 5 stitches. After our 5 single crochets, we are all going to be putting 1 half double crochet into each of the next 5 stitches as well. Now from here, we're going to be putting 1 double crochet into every chain and stitch, making our way all the way up and over until we all have 12 stitches left. And those 12 stitches is going to be for our 5 half double crochets, 5 single crochets, and there are 2 stitches that we need to do a decrease as well. So just do the first one, yarn over, into that following stitch, insert your hook, pull through 2, pull through 2. Continue putting 1 double crochet into every stitch and chain until we have 12 stitches left. I put 1 double crochet into every stitch, making my way all the way up and around. We should all have a total of 12 stitches left. So now we're going to close this row off with 5 half double, 2 single, and then a decrease of 2 single. Now to do 5 single crochets, and we should all have 2 stitches left. Into those last 2 stitches, let's do a decrease of 2 single crochets. So into that second to last stitch, pull through, into that last stitch, pull through all 3, and now we're going to slip stitch into that chain space. And now our row 1 for our sleeve is finished. Now keeping in mind that that row 1 does not include that chain row that we did. That was just our prep row. Now from here, we're going to do a slip stitch row, and each of our rows is going to start and end with a decrease of 2. So chain 1, and now we're going to flip our work because we want the same ribbing as the body. To do a decrease of 2 back loop slip stitches, we're going to find that first stitch from our previous row and insert only into that back loop. Pull through, find that following stitch and into that back loop. And when we have those 3 loops on our hook, we're going to yarn over, pull through all 3. And from here, continue putting 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, leaving the last 2 so we can decrease together once more. So we've made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch row. We should have 2 stitches left, and we're going to do another decrease together. So into that second to last back loop, insert pull through, into that last back loop, insert your hook. When we have those 3 loops, yarn over, pull through all 3, and then to close off this row, slip stitch into that chain space that we made when we started this row. And from here, we're going to repeat our 2 previous rows. So let's get started on the following row, which is our double crochet row. And I use air quotes when we say double crochet row because we do start off with our singles and half doubles. So we're going to chain 1 and flip our work. Now remembering that every row that we have is going to start and end with a decrease of 2, we're going to start this row off with a decrease of 2 back loop single crochets. And we're doing the back loops because we want the same ribbing as the front and back panel. So start by finding the last stitch from our previous row and insert into that back loop. Pull through into that following stitch's back loop, pull through, and when we have those 3 loops, yarn over, pull through all 3. Now from here, we're going to continue on with the same stitch sequence that we did for the previous row. So now 5 back loop single crochets, and right after that, 5 back loop half double crochets. And now that we have our 5 back loop half double crochets, 1 double crochet into every back loop until we have a total of 12 stitches left. And remember, those 12 stitches are for the 5 back loop half doubles, 5 back loop singles, and then decrease of 2 at the end. We've made our way around, putting 1 back loop double crochet into every stitch again, and we should all have 12 stitches left. We're going to close this row off starting with 5 back loop half double crochets. After our 5 back loop half double crochets, we are then going to do 5 back loop single crochets, and that should leave 2 stitches left to do a decrease. And now that we have those 2 stitches left to do our decrease, insert your hook into that second to last stitch's back loop, pull through into that last stitch's back loop, pull through all 3, and then slip stitch into the chain space. And from here, it's just going to be an exact repeat of our 2 previous rows. So a back loop slip stitch row that starts and ends with a decrease of 2 back loop slip stitches, and then a double crochet row that starts and ends with a decrease of 2 back loop single crochets. And then to start the row off, it's 5 back loop singles, 5 back loop half doubles, 1 back loop double crochet into every stitch, and then into the last 12 stitches, 5 back loop doubles, 5 back loop singles, and then a decrease of 2. Continue to repeat those 2 rows until we get a cap sleeve the length that we would like for it to be, making sure that we end on a double crochet row. I already know how many rows I want to have. I want to have a total of 15, so I will be getting my 15 rows finished up. I will do a chain up 1 and cut, and then repeat everything we did here on the other side. So I am back. Both of my sleeves are finished up, and now we're going to get started on our collar. So let's all make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, and then we're going to insert our hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the back. You're going to insert our yarn onto our hook, and we're going to be putting 2 single crochets into every side half double, 1 single crochet into every side slip stitch row, and then 1 single crochet into every stitch. So we're going to chain 1 and find that first side row. This side row is my first, which is a side slip stitch row. I'm going to insert my hook in through that top loop, and insert with 1 single crochet. And then find the following side row for me, which is a side half double crochet row. So 2 single crochets into there. There's 1 and there's 2. We're going to continue this, making our way all the way around, and once we reach our regular stitches along the front panel, just put 1 single crochet into each of those. Now that we've made our way all the way around with our single crochet row, we have slip stitched into that chain space. We're now going to make a chain the length that we'd like for our collar to be. Now I'd like for mine to be just about 1 inch or 2 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 5. Now that we have our chain, we're going to slip stitch all the way down. So chain 1, and then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, insert with a slip stitch. Continue putting 1 slip stitch into every chain, but remembering not to tug too tightly after every stitch, otherwise the following row could be too tight to work into. Now that our row 1 is nearly finished, we need to connect it into the base. So find that next available stitch into the base, slip stitch into there to close off our row 1, and that doesn't count as a stitch, that's just our turning chain. To work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, flip our work, and now we're going to be putting 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So finding the last stitch from our previous row, insert into that back loop, gently pull through everything, and continue this till we reach the end of the row. At the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, and then continue to put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and then we can connect it into the base together. Now our rows 1, 2, 3 are nearly finished. We need to connect it once more. So inserting our hook into that following stitch into the base, slip stitch into there. Again, this doesn't count as a stitch. And then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next stitch into the base, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch again. From here, continue to repeat our 2 previous rows, so our back loop slip stitch rows with no increases and no decreases, and connecting it into the base the same way that we just did, until we don't have any more stitches into the base left to work into. I'll meet you back so that we can seam everything together. We've made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitches for our collar. We don't have any more stitches left, so now we're going to seam everything together. Now this is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam, the same seam that we have for the side, so let's all make sure that our work is flipped right side out. Insert your hook into that first stitch into the front panel and insert only into that front loop. Into that next stitch into the back panel, insert only into that back loop, yarn over, pull through everything, and then that's it. Continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. And now that our collar is finished, we are all done. Last thing we're going to have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. All of those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I will catch you on the next one. Bye!